Rome wasn't built in a day. You've heard it before, haven't you? But how often do we actually live by it? Greatness, whether it's in your personal growth, career, or relationships, demands more than fleeting bursts of enthusiasm. It takes time, deliberate effort, and yes, sacrifice. The real question is, are you truly ready to pay the price? Whatever it takes, whether you want to become rich or charming, millionaire, billionaire. Start now, do it. Best time for planting a tree was 30 years ago, and the next best time is today. This is not some hollow motivational video. It is in-depth analysis of psychology and philosophy of human psyche, colored by the often controversial and powerful book, 48 Laws of Power, written by Greene. Here's the kicker. New Year's resolution is a myth. They fail because they're built on the illusion of instant transformation. They're bold, exciting promises made in the heat of the moment, but often lack the foundation to last beyond January. Why? Because real change isn't born from a single declaration. It's nurtured in the mundane, daily grind of consistency and discipline. This year, in 2025, let's skip the myth of overnight success and embrace a truth few dare to confront. Change isn't glamorous, but it's worth it. Are you ready to trade quick fixes for steady progress? It'll be hard. Comment down, challenge accepted. This video is about power. Power over yourself. And also, if you want to change someone else. But whatever you do, for the love of God, use it ethically. Chapter 1. Why is it this hard to change? Have you ever noticed how the world resists sudden upheaval? It's like trying to force a river to change its course overnight. It only leads to chaos. Change, much like the river, has a rhythm. To disrupt it too harshly is to invite resistance. But to respect its flow, to guide it patiently, is to create transformation that endures. When you advocate for change, especially in human systems, be it society, organizations, or even personal habits, you're working against inertia, the tendency to stick to the familiar. People cling to what they know, not always because it's better, but because it's predictable. This is why a sudden push for complete reform often collapses under its own weight. The shock overwhelms the system, and fear outweighs progress. From a Stoic lens, patience is the art of aligning with nature's pace. The Stoics teach us to understand what is within our power and what is not. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." This isn't just about obstacles. It's about using resistance to mold a better path. Incremental change doesn't battle resistance. It works with it, softening its edges over time. Psychological studies have shown that humans are creatures of habit. The status quo bias, a cognitive tendency to prefer things to stay as they are, explains why people resist sudden changes, even if those changes seem beneficial. For example, a 2010 study by Samuelson and Zeckhauser demonstrated how decision-making is deeply rooted in maintaining existing conditions, often leading to irrational choices against reform. This tendency isn't inherently negative. It's an adaptive trait that helps societies maintain stability, but it also warns us to approach change as a process, not a single event. When people are introduced to new ideas gradually, their minds adapt and the resistance softens. Think of reform as planting a tree. You don't expect fruit the moment you sow the seed, do you? You water it, nurture it, and trust time to do its part. When you force growth, you risk snapping the delicate stem. The same applies to human systems. They thrive on patience and gentle encouragement. To demand all at once is to demand failure. To guide step by step is to demand progress. In the art of change, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Chapter 2. The weight of sudden overhaul. Why do we instinctively recoil from sudden, sweeping changes? it's not mere stubbornness. It's a deeper, almost primal instinct. Sudden reform feels like the ground beneath us shifting unexpectedly, just as a tree bracing against a storm cannot withstand a sudden, violent pull. Human systems falter under the weight of too much change at once. Change must feel organic, even when it is intentional. When we force reform, we challenge not only habits, but identities. People often associate their sense of self with the structures around them, cultures, traditions, or routines. Shattering these too quickly creates a psychological void, leaving individuals unsure of their footing. Fear steps in to fill the gap, and fear is an enemy of growth. History provides ample lessons. Think of revolutions that sought radical, overnight reform. While they often began with hope, many spiraled into chaos. Why? Because the system they dismantled was more than just an institution. It was a framework people relied on for security, even if imperfectly. Destroying the framework without offering a gradual alternative creates a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum, and in its rush to fill it, instability often takes root. This echoes the philosophical idea that excessive action often undermines itself. Lao Tzu, from a Taoist perspective, observed, governing a large country is like frying a small fish. Too much handling will spoil it. While Taoism isn't Stoicism, the wisdom aligns. Excessive interference breeds disorder. Behavioral psychology explains this through the concept of cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort people feel when confronted with conflicting beliefs or ideas. Sweeping reforms force individuals to confront contradictions between what they've known and what's being imposed. This discomfort often leads to resistance, even sabotage, as a means of restoring mental equilibrium. Consider the zone of proximal development, a concept from educational psychology. It suggests that people learn and grow best just slightly beyond their comfort zone, not miles beyond it. Change works similarly. Incremental shifts, introduced thoughtfully, allow people to adapt without overwhelming them. Reform is not a hammer to shatter, but a chisel to shape. Stoicism reminds us that while we cannot control external chaos, we can control how we introduce order. When advocating for transformation, act not as a tyrant forcing compliance, but as a gardener nurturing growth. True change isn't a sudden storm, it's a steady sunrise, gradually illuminating what once seemed dark. So, if you want to pass an exam, read a little every day. If you want to be rich, save and invest every month. If you want a slim body, exercise every day. Consistency is the key. Chapter 3. Balancing vision with patience. How do we reconcile the urgency for change with the patience it demands? This question sits at the heart of reform, testing both our resolve and our restraint. To act with vision, but remain anchored in patience, is to walk a tightrope. The temptation to rush change often stems from frustration. When we recognize flaws in a system or ourselves, the impulse is to tear down and rebuild, thinking speed equates to efficiency. But this approach overlooks a critical truth. Transformation, like growth, is a layered process. Rushing sacrifices depth for quick results, and shallow reform rarely lasts. Stoicism teaches us to distinguish between what we can control and what lies beyond our reach. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." This isn't a call to abandon action, but a reminder that meaningful change begins within and requires harmony with the natural pace of things. Rushing against the current invites resistance, but moving with it allows for a smoother, more effective journey. Shaping a clay pot, for example, offers clarity. If the potter spins the wheel too fast or applies pressure too abruptly, the clay collapses, shaping anything worthwhile. Be it a habit, an organization, or a movement demands a steady hand and a sense of timing. Research in behavioral science highlights the power of small wins. A 1984 study by Carl Weick emphasized how incremental progress builds momentum. Small, tangible victories reinforce confidence and create a sense of progress, making people more likely to embrace larger changes over time. Each step affirms capability and reduces fear, slowly shifting attitudes and behaviors. This approach also combats future shock, a concept Alvin Toffler introduced to describe the disorientation people feel when overwhelmed by rapid change. Small steps anchor individuals, making the process digestible and less intimidating. Visionaries often struggle with patience, but vision without patience is like a map without a compass. You may see the destination, but without direction and measured steps, you risk getting lost. Reform doesn't demand abandoning ambition. It demands understanding the tempo of progress. The balance lies in holding the end goal in mind while taking deliberate, thoughtful steps toward it. As the Stoics remind us, mastery lies not in exerting force, but in aligning ourselves with the rhythm of life. In reform, as in nature, the strongest changes come not from breaking, but from bending and shaping over time. Chapter 4. The Invisible Threads of Resistance. Have you ever wondered why even the most logical changes meet resistance? It's not about rejecting the idea per se. It's about warding off change, which is something that people tend to avoid. It isn't only a matter of people refusing a change for lack of knowledge. It is a matter of toga to grasp comfort, identity, and stability. Recognizing this resistance isn't just a tactic. It is mandatory for significant change to happen. Change is always accompanied by resistance, although this partner is much less vocal. It is present in its mildest form, sometimes in the form of a too slow decision-making, and in other cases in the form of an open rebellion. When we persist, we are not just fighting the system. We are fighting the beliefs and feelings associated with that system, and that's a fight that can't often be won by force. Fundamentally, resistance is about fear, and that is fear of the unknown, fear of change, and fear of the failure. Studied effect which has been observed by Kahneman and Tversky, 1979, loss aversion. Although the existing situation can never be perfect, change seems to be a kind of loss, which deprives the process of certain attractiveness. Other reasons are the endowment effect. It makes people overemphasize on something because it belongs to them in the first place, regardless of whether the object of study is a working process, a cultural practice, or a self. Someone becomes accustomed to something and becomes resistant to change. Stoicism and the dance with resistance. The Stoics often emphasize the importance of working with the nature of things rather than against it. Epictetus advised, do not seek to change what you cannot control. Instead, master how you respond. Resistance, then, is not an obstacle to eliminate, but an element to understand and engage with. It's like sailing. You don't fight the wind. You adjust your sails to move with it. Reform requires acknowledging that resistance is not the enemy, but the guardian of what people hold dear. To bypass it, you must show that the change doesn't erase their values, but enhances or preserves them in a new way. Building bridges, not walls. Imagine introducing change as building a bridge between the known and the unknown. A bridge isn't a leap into chaos. It's a path, step by step, to something better. When people feel safe on this journey, their resistance wanes. Effective leaders, teachers, and reformers know this. They meet resistance with empathy and gradually build trust. Ultimately, resistance is a natural check against reckless change. It forces us to reflect, refine, and prove the worth of our ideas. And in doing so, it ensures that the change we create is not just imposed, but embraced, not just fleeting, but enduring. Chapter 5. The fragility of forced progress. Have you ever watched a child learning to walk? They stumble, rise, and move forward at their own pace. If you were to grab their hand and pull too hard, they might fall or resist altogether. This mirrors the delicate nature of progress. Force it too much, and you risk breaking what you aim to improve. Forced progress assumes that systems, people, or societies can withstand rapid upheaval without cracking under pressure. But the truth is, progress that isn't allowed to grow organically often collapses. It's like trying to stretch a fragile thread beyond its limits. It snaps, leaving you with fragments instead of unity. Psychologically, people thrive on gradual adaptation. When forced to change too quickly, cognitive overload occurs, where the brain struggles to process too many shifts at once. Research in neuroscience has shown that abrupt changes activate the brain's amygdala, the center for fear and threat detection. This triggers defensive behaviors, causing people to resist even beneficial reforms. This is further supported by the boomerang effect, a phenomenon in which people push back harder when they feel their autonomy is being threatened. A study by Bremen in 1966 demonstrated this tendency, particularly in contexts where individuals feel coerced or manipulated. Sudden, enforced progress often feels like a threat to freedom, and the natural response is rebellion. The Stoics recognized that forcing outcomes rarely leads to lasting success. Seneca wrote, "What progress have I made? I have begun to be a friend to myself." The essence of this wisdom is understanding that progress, whether personal or collective, must align with the natural rhythms of life. To impose progress is to ignore the natural resistance and fragility of the human condition. Progress, like a sapling, needs nurturing, not wrenching. It grows stronger when allowed to take root and adapt to its environment. The Stoic path reminds us that control lies in guiding, not dictating. The art of gentle steering. Reform isn't about bending people or systems to your will. It's about steering them in the right direction. A skilled reformer resembles a skilled sailor, adjusting to the winds, guiding the ship steadily toward the horizon without capsizing it. Change, imposed too quickly, often results in short-term compliance, but long-term collapse. But change introduced thoughtfully creates a foundation that endures. The art lies not in forcing progress, but in fostering it, respecting the fragility of the systems and people. In life, as in nature, slow and steady progress often wins, not because it is faster, but because it is truer. Chapter 6. Calculated small steps. Why do we often undervalue small steps? It's easy to dismiss gradual progress as insignificant in a world obsessed with quick fixes and grand gestures. Yet, small steps are the building blocks of meaningful and lasting change. They're like drops of water, shaping a stone, not through force, but through persistence. True transformation doesn't arrive in a dramatic flash. It unfolds quietly, almost imperceptibly. The power of small steps lies in their consistency. They don't demand the impossible, but instead invite steady progress, creating space for reflection, adaptation, and growth. It's a process, not a spectacle. The compound effect, popularized by Darren Hardy in 2010, illustrates how tiny, consistent actions lead to significant results over time. This principle isn't just for personal goals. It applies to societal and organizational change as well. When people experience minor, manageable shifts, they're more likely to sustain those changes because they don't feel overwhelmed. This connects to the concept of behavioral momentum in psychology. Similar to physical momentum, behavioral momentum suggests that once people start moving in a particular direction, they're more likely to continue. Introducing change incrementally builds this momentum, making the larger transformation feel natural rather than forced. Embracing the long game. The Stoics understood the value of incremental progress. Epictetus reminded us, no great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. This wisdom reflects the importance of respecting the natural pace of growth, allowing each step to build upon the last. Patience, a core Stoic virtue, doesn't mean passivity. It means accepting that while we control our actions, the outcomes often unfold on their own timeline. When we focus on small, purposeful steps, we align ourselves with the flow of nature rather than battling against it. Imagine trying to climb a mountain. If you attempt to leap to the peak in one bound, you'll fail. But if you take it step by step, each foothold bringing you closer, the summit becomes attainable. Small steps work the same way. They accumulate, forming a solid foundation for greater achievements. This principle applies to relationships, personal habits, or even societal reform. By starting small, you create a ripple effect that grows larger with each step. These ripples might seem minor at first, but over time, they shape the tide. In the end, the power of small steps isn't just in their simplicity, but in their persistence. They remind us that lasting change isn't about rushing forward. It's about moving forward, one deliberate step at a time. Chapter 7. The Illusion of Perfection in Change. Have you ever hesitated to act because the conditions weren't just right? This yearning for perfection, waiting for the ideal moment or solution, often stalls change rather than advances it. The truth is, the perfect reform doesn't exist. Clinging to an unattainable ideal can paralyze progress and alienate those who might otherwise support it. Perfection in change is an illusion, one that blinds us to the beauty of the imperfect steps along the way. It's in these imperfections, these trial and error efforts, that real transformation takes root. Perfection isn't a prerequisite for change. It's a product of the process itself. The paradox of choice, studied by Barry Schwartz 2004, explains how an overwhelming desire to choose the best option often leads to inaction. In the context of change, this manifests as endless debates and analysis, seeking flawless solutions that rarely come. Psychologists call this decision paralysis, an inability to act because the fear of making a mistake outweighs the potential benefits. Perfectionism compounds this paralysis, driving individuals or groups to overanalyze and underperform. While the intention behind perfectionism may be noble, its outcome is counterproductive. It delays action, stifles creativity, and often leaves problems unresolved. The Stoics teach us to embrace the present and act within the bounds of what is possible. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't wait for perfection. Practice what is within your power now." This wisdom emphasizes action over hesitation, reminding us that flaws are not barriers but stepping stones. Stoicism also encourages us to separate what is essential from what is superfluous. In reform, aiming for an ideal can obscure the immediate actions needed to address real issues. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, the Stoic way is to move forward with what we have, refining the process as we go. Change, like nature, thrives in imperfection. Think of a seed breaking through the soil. It doesn't wait for the perfect sunlight or rainfall to grow. It adapts to its environment, pushing forward despite challenges. Similarly, meaningful reform grows out of adaptability, not precision. By accepting imperfection, we also foster resilience. Imperfect progress teaches us to adjust, learn, and persist, even when the path is unclear. It frees us from the paralyzing grip of perfect solutions and opens us to the transformative power of effort and intention. Ultimately, the illusion of perfection is a trap. Real progress lies in embracing imperfection, taking action despite uncertainty, and refining as we move forward. Change isn't perfect. It's alive, evolving, and beautifully flawed. And that's where its strength lies. Chapter 8. Not change, it's evolution. What makes change endure? Is it the speed at which it's implemented or the depth of its roots? History suggests that lasting change isn't built on urgency. It's cultivated through patience, adaptability, and persistence. The legacy of reform lies not in its immediacy, but in its ability to stand the test of time. When change is gradual, it becomes part of the fabric of life, not an external force imposed from above. Like a tree growing slowly but steadily, its roots strengthen and spread, anchoring it firmly, even in storms. The mark of enduring change is this integration. It doesn't feel like change anymore. It feels like evolution. The psychology of sustainable transformation. Sustainability in change relies on a principle called incremental reinforcement. Behavioral science shows that people are more likely to maintain behaviors or systems when they've been introduced progressively and reinforced consistently. Change, when introduced in digestible portions, creates habits and shifts mindsets in a way that feels natural, not forced. The concept of emotional ownership also plays a key role. When individuals feel involved in the process of change, they are more likely to adopt and protect it. This ownership fosters a sense of shared responsibility, ensuring that the reform isn't just implemented but embraced. The Stoics viewed change as a natural and ongoing process. Epictetus wisely observed, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." This advice emphasizes deliberate, purposeful action aligned with a clear vision. Lasting change doesn't happen overnight. It's cultivated with intention and care. From a Stoic perspective, true reform focuses not just on external systems, but on internal transformations. Societies, organizations, and individuals must align their actions with core values. Without this alignment, even well-intentioned changes crumble under the weight of inconsistency. To create enduring change, approach it as you would building a foundation. Lay one stone at a time, ensuring each is solid before placing the next. Rushing to complete the structure only increases the likelihood of collapse. Foundations built slowly, with care and precision, support not just today's needs, but the aspirations of future generations. The legacy of gradual reform also rests on humility. It acknowledges that change is an ongoing journey, not a fixed destination. Reformers must embrace the idea that their work is a step in a larger process, one that others will continue. This perspective fosters a long-term mindset, prioritizing the health of the system over the ego of its architect. In the end, lasting change is not a sprint. It's a relay. The baton of reform passes from one hand to another, each step adding strength and resilience to the whole. And when change is nurtured with patience, wisdom, and care, it becomes more than a moment. It becomes a legacy. Let me just summarize the whole video for you. Change is not a force to be wielded recklessly. It is an art of patience, precision, and understanding. Rushing reforms leads to resistance and collapse, while gradual, deliberate progress fosters trust, stability, and long-lasting transformation. By respecting human psychology, acknowledging resistance, and embracing imperfection, we create pathways to meaningful change that endure. What we've learned. Start small, think big. Significant transformation begins with manageable, incremental steps. Respect resistance. Opposition isn't the enemy. It's an indicator of values and fears that must be addressed. Be patient with progress. Time is an ally. True change grows steadily, not abruptly. Embrace imperfection. Don't wait for perfection to act. Let me give you some practical advices. Focus on small wins. Break your goals into smaller steps and celebrate progress to build momentum. Involve others. Invite collaboration to foster emotional ownership and reduce resistance. Be a listener. Understand the fears and concerns behind resistance to tailor change effectively. Refine along the way. Treat change as an evolving process. Learn and adapt without fixating on perfect solutions. Change isn't about conquering or forcing, it's about guiding. The steady chisel shapes the stone more effectively than the sledgehammer. Take one step at a time, and over time, those steps will build the bridge to something transformative and lasting. I hope you enjoyed the video and it was worth your time. If you found it valuable, please share your opinion in the comment section and share this video to your son or daughter, or actually anyone who can get benefit from it. Thanks.